Hello there, and welcome back to The Sleepy Scientist. Tonight we're taking a slow, soothing dive into one of the most mysterious places on Earth, the deep sea. It's dark, cold, crushingly quiet, and somehow full of life. Life that glows in the dark, survives under mountains of water, and thrives without a single ray of sunlight. It's a world so strange it almost feels like science fiction, but it's all wonderfully real. Now, I do hope this video doesn't turn out to be too interesting and accidentally keep you awake, but if it does, well, at least you'll drift off knowing a bit more about how anglerfish flirt, how worms eat metal, or why glowing jellyfish might be nature's original nightlights. Before we begin our descent, if you're enjoying these calm science journeys, I'd be so grateful if you gave this video a gentle like and subscribed. It really helps this little sleepy channel keep going. And if you'd like to leave a comment below, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is as you press play. Is it the quiet early hours just past midnight, or maybe a nap time detour? So, tuck yourself in, get comfortable, and let your mind float gently downward. No need to hold your breath, we'll take it nice and slow. The ocean is wide, the science is strange, and there's no rush at all. And just a little note before we begin. This video is for relaxation and educational purposes only, and is not intended to provide medical advice or replace professional care. Imagine floating weightless in water so dark, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. The sun is just a memory above you now, far above the churning waves and distant gulls. Down here, everything is quiet, everything is cold, and everything is very, very deep. Welcome to the ocean, our planet's final frontier. You might think you know the ocean. Maybe you've stood on the shore and watched the tide roll in, gone for a swim, or snorkeled near a reef, marveling at the fish and coral beneath you. But all of that, the glittering surface, the colorful reefs, the gentle waves, that's just the beginning. That's barely even scratching the surface, because the ocean doesn't just go out, it goes down, and it keeps going and going and going. To understand the deep sea, we first need to understand the vastness of the ocean itself. Covering more than 70% of the Earth's surface, the ocean holds over 95% of all the water on the planet. That's more than 1 billion cubic kilometers of water. It is quite literally the largest living space on Earth, and yet more than 80% of it remains unexplored. We've mapped the surface of Mars in greater detail than we have the bottom of our own ocean. The ocean is not one big uniform space. It's divided into layers, like a watery cake, though definitely not the kind you'd want to eat. These layers, or zones, are defined mostly by how deep they go and how much light reaches them. Let's gently drift through each one. The first layer is the epipelagic zone, also known as the sunlight zone. This is the part of the ocean you're most familiar with. It stretches from the surface down to about 200 meters, or about 650 feet. Sunlight still penetrates this zone, which means plants like phytoplankton can photosynthesize, and animals here tend to rely on sight to find food and avoid predators. Most of the fish we know and love live here: tuna, dolphins, jellyfish, and yes, even the occasional human paddling around with a snorkel. Below that is the mesopelagic zone, sometimes called the twilight zone. This zone extends from about 200 meters down to 1,000 meters, or roughly 3,300 feet. Sunlight still trickles in here, but it's dim and bluish, not strong enough to support photosynthesis. The creatures that live here have adapted to the gloom with some pretty creative strategies. Many have enormous eyes to capture as much light as possible, or they glow with their own light in a phenomenon called bioluminescence. This is where things start to get really interesting and really weird. Below 1,000 meters, we enter the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. Here, there is no sunlight at all. It is pitch black, cold, and the pressure is immense, over 100 times what you'd feel at the surface. Most of the creatures here are slow-moving, energy-efficient, and either blind or equipped with their own glow. It's a quiet, mysterious place full of ghostly shapes and drifting shadows. And then we go deeper still, into the abysso-pelagic zone. The name comes from the Greek word abyssal, meaning bottomless. This zone stretches from about 4,000 meters to 6,000 meters deep, or around 13,000 to nearly 20,000 feet. It's hard to comprehend how far down that is. It's like stacking 4 Mount Everests on top of each other and then diving to the base. Down here, the water is near freezing, the pressure is crushing, and yet life persists, strange, beautiful, alien life. Finally, we reach the hadopelagic zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This zone includes the ocean trenches, the deepest parts of the sea. The Mariana Trench in the western Pacific is the most famous, plunging nearly 11,000 meters below the surface. That's deeper than commercial airplanes cruise above the earth. Very few creatures make it down here, but the ones that do are tough, strange, and uniquely adapted to a world without light, warmth, or company. One of the most intriguing things about the deep sea is how little we truly know about it. Despite our technological advancements, exploring the deep ocean is still extremely difficult. The pressure at great depths can crush most submarines like an empty soda can. The darkness makes it hard to see, and the cold makes machinery sluggish and brittle. Most of our deep sea knowledge comes from remotely operated vehicles, deep diving submersibles, and sonar mapping. Even so, every time scientists send a probe down, they find something new, a new species, a new behavior, a new mystery. But why should we care about these dark, distant places? After all, they're not exactly part of our daily lives, unless your daily commute involves a bathyscaphe. Well, for starters, the deep sea plays a vital role in Earth's ecosystems. It helps regulate the global climate by absorbing and storing carbon dioxide, cycles nutrients that support life throughout the ocean, and is home to untold biodiversity, some of which may hold medical or technological secrets we've yet to discover. The deep ocean is also a record keeper. Its sediments hold clues about Earth's past climate, ancient ecosystems, and even extinction events. It's a library of natural history quietly sitting beneath the waves. Of course, the deep sea isn't all serene wonder. It's also a place of intense challenges. Life here has to contend with high pressure, cold temperatures, and complete darkness. There's very little food, and sometimes very little oxygen, and yet creatures have found ways to survive and even thrive under these extreme conditions. Some of these adaptations are so creative, so alien, that they seem more at home in a science fiction film than on our own planet. Take the barley fish, for example. This strange little creature has a transparent head through which you can see its tubular eyes rotating inside, like periscopes. Or consider the vampire squid, which can turn itself inside out and emits a bioluminescent display when threatened. And then there are the deep-sea anglerfish, whose females grow to the size of a football, while the males are tiny parasitic hitchhikers that fuse permanently to their mates. These animals are more than just biological curiosities, they're testaments to life's persistence, its ingenuity, and its ability to adapt to the most inhospitable environments. The deep sea may seem barren or lifeless, but in truth, it is bustling with a strange kind of activity, slow, deliberate, and perfectly suited to the place it calls home. As you float here in your imagination, drifting quietly through the layers of the sea, you might find something oddly comforting about this dark, peaceful world. There's no rush in the deep sea, no sudden movements, just the slow pulse of survival, the quiet glow of life in the darkness, and the eternal rhythm of the currents. And so we begin our journey into this alien world beneath the waves, not with a splash, but with a sigh. There's nothing here to fear, only to marvel at. The sea is deep, but our curiosity is deeper still. Let's keep drifting. Let's start with something simple. Take a deep breath, hold it gently, and now imagine that the weight of the entire Empire State Building is pressing down on your chest. A bit uncomfortable, right? That's what it's like to live in the deep sea, except it's not just your chest, it's your entire body, every inch, every cell, every molecule, being squeezed by unimaginable pressure. But down in the ocean's darkest corners, this crushing force isn't a disaster, it's simply a way of life. To understand pressure in the deep sea, we need to take a little dip into physics. At sea level, we live under the weight of the atmosphere, that's about 1 atmosphere of pressure, or roughly 1 kilogram per square centimeter. We don't really notice it because our bodies are built to balance it perfectly. But as you go underwater, something curious happens. Water is heavy, much heavier than air, and it doesn't take much depth before you start to feel the difference. For every 10 meters you descend, or about 33 feet, the pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. That means at just 10 meters below the surface, the pressure is already double what it is up here on land. Now, let's dive a bit deeper. At 100 meters, it's 11 times the pressure. At 1000 meters, or about 3,300 feet, it's over 100 times the pressure of the surface. And at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters down, the pressure reaches over 1,100 atmospheres. That's more than 8 tons pressing down on every square inch of surface. If you're picturing an elephant delicately balancing on your pinky finger, you're not far off. This kind of pressure is utterly lethal to most land-dwelling creatures. Our lungs would collapse, our organs would rupture, our very cells would burst like overfilled balloons, and it's not just humans who are poorly equipped for this kind of environment. Most shallow water animals couldn't survive it either. So, how does anything live down there? It turns out that deep-sea creatures aren't just tough, they're marvels of adaptation. One of the biggest keys to their survival is flexibility, both literally and figuratively. Many deep-sea animals have soft, gelatinous bodies with very few hard parts. Think of creatures like the blobfish, the vampire squid, or deep-dwelling jellyfish. These animals are squishy, and that's exactly what makes them so pressure-resistant. Unlike us, they don't have air pockets in their bodies that would collapse under pressure. They also don't have gas-filled bladders, which are used by many fish to control buoyancy. At great depths, those bladders would implode or become useless. So, deep-sea fish often manage buoyancy through special oils or compounds in their tissues, which are unaffected by pressure. Then there's the matter of cellular function. Under high pressure, even the very chemistry of life is challenged. Proteins and enzymes, those microscopic workhorses inside every cell, begin to change shape, misfold, or stop working properly. But deep-sea creatures have evolved pressure-resistant enzymes and membranes that keep functioning smoothly, even under intense compression. Their cell membranes contain special fats that remain fluid in the cold and under high pressure, helping maintain critical functions like nutrient transport and energy production. Think of it like this: if you've ever tried opening a tightly sealed plastic container at high altitude or on an airplane, you know how pressure changes can make simple things tricky. Now imagine you're a fish, and your survival depends on millions of such tiny containers working perfectly every second, even under crushing conditions. That's what deep-sea animals have mastered. Interestingly, some deep-sea species don't just tolerate pressure, they rely on it. Certain enzymes in these organisms only function properly under high-pressure conditions. If you brought them to the surface, they wouldn't just be uncomfortable, they might not survive at all. That's one reason why studying deep-sea life is so difficult. Many creatures brought to the surface in trawls or submersible captures don't survive the journey. The pressure drop can be as dangerous to them as a pressure increase would be to us. There are even animals that temporarily venture into deep waters and return to the surface, like squid and certain species of whales. These creatures have developed remarkable strategies to deal with rapid pressure changes. Sperm whales, for example, can dive to depths of over 2,000 meters in search of food. That's more than 6,000 feet down. Their rib cages are flexible, their lungs collapse safely, and their blood can store large amounts of oxygen to avoid decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends. Other creatures, like certain species of deep-dwelling amphipods and isopods, have incorporated heavy metals into their exoskeletons. Some even have aluminum-based armor sourced from the surrounding seawater. That's right, they're mining their own protective gear. Take that, Iron Man. One especially fascinating creature is the hadal snailfish. It's a small, pale, ghostly fish that lives at depths of over 8,000 meters. It has no scales, no swim bladder, and incredibly thin bones. Its skin is translucent, its body is nearly gelatinous, and yet it thrives under pressure that would obliterate almost anything else. Scientists studying these fish have found unique proteins in their cells that act like natural antifreeze and pressure stabilizers. If deep-sea life were an Olympic event, the snailfish would be the quiet, unassuming gold medalist. Even bacteria have adapted to these extreme conditions. Deep-sea extremophiles, such as pisophiles, literally meaning pressure lovers, thrive in environments with pressures up to 1,000 times greater than at sea level. Some of them live near hydrothermal vents, where they endure not only crushing pressure but also scalding temperatures and high concentrations of heavy metals. they don't just survive there, they flourish. These microbes may hold clues to how life began on Earth, and possibly even how it might exist elsewhere in the universe, like beneath the icy crust of Jupiter's moon Europa. Pressure also shapes how deep-sea animals behave, because moving around expends energy and oxygen, both of which are in short supply at depth. Many animals are slow, deliberate movers. Some lie in wait for prey to stumble upon them, rather than actively hunting. Others use clever traps, like the anglerfish's glowing lure, to draw dinner directly to their mouths. In the deep sea, stealth and patience are often better strategies than speed and aggression. So, what would happen if you, as a curious human, tried to explore the deep sea yourself without proper equipment? Well, I wouldn't recommend it. Without protection, the pressure would crush you within moments. Submersibles and deep diving equipment must be built with incredibly strong materials, titanium, special glass, carbon composites, and designed to withstand thousands of atmospheres of pressure. Even the tiniest flaw in the hull of a deep-sea vehicle can spell disaster. That's why manned dives are rare, expensive, and often reserved for the most important research missions. And yet, despite the danger, the deep sea keeps drawing us in. Maybe it's the mystery, maybe it's the challenge, or maybe it's the simple fact that hidden beneath kilometers of water, there exists a world almost untouched by human hands, a place where the rules are different, where life is slow but resilient, where pressure doesn't mean stress, it just means home. So, the next time you feel the weight of the world pressing down on you, just remember, somewhere thousands of meters below the surface, tiny creatures are living their best lives under pressures you can't even imagine, and they're doing just fine. It's cold down there, not the kind of cold where you throw on a cozy sweater and sip hot tea, but the kind that seeps into your very atoms, a still, merciless chill that hugs everything with the patience of time and the indifference of physics. Welcome to the deep sea, where warmth is a rare and precious luxury. The average temperature of the deep ocean hovers just above freezing, specifically around 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, or 35 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. In certain regions like the deepest trenches, the water can dip below zero. That's possible because salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water. So, even though the water isn't frozen solid, it's just cold enough to make most life on the surface pack up and head for the equator. But for deep-sea creatures, this cold is simply the background music to their entire existence. They don't complain, they don't shiver. Instead, they've evolved some extraordinary adaptations that allow them to not just survive but thrive in the icy abyss. Let's start with the basics. What does cold actually do to living organisms? At low temperatures, everything slows down. Chemical reactions become sluggish, metabolism grinds to a crawl, muscles contract more slowly, and enzymes, the little proteins that make biological processes happen, begin to stiffen or stop working altogether. Imagine trying to bake a cake in an oven that never gets above lukewarm. It takes forever, and the results are questionable. This is why life in the deep sea tends to be slow, very slow. Deep sea fish can live for decades, sometimes even over a century. They grow slowly, reproduce infrequently, and move with a sort of dreamy elegance, like underwater ballerinas in slow motion. Their world is one of patience, meals are rare, opportunities are few, so there's no rush. To keep their biological machinery working, deep-sea animals often rely on cold-adapted enzymes. These enzymes have more flexible structures than their warm water counterparts, allowing them to continue functioning at low temperatures. They're like the high-performance antifreeze of the biological world. However, this flexibility comes at a cost. Those same enzymes tend to be more fragile and break down easily if the temperature rises too much. That's why many deep-sea species are extremely sensitive to changes in temperature. Sometimes just a few degrees warmer can spell disaster. Cell membranes also have to be specially designed for life in the cold. Normally, a cell membrane is like a thin film of oil. It needs to be fluid enough for nutrients to pass through and for the cell to function. But in cold temperatures, that membrane can stiffen, becoming less permeable and less efficient. To counter this, deep-sea organisms adjust the types of fats in their membranes. They use more unsaturated fats, which stay fluid at lower temperatures, much like how vegetable oil stays liquid in the fridge while butter becomes solid. This lipid remodeling is crucial for survival in the deep, chilly dark. But low temperature isn't just about chemistry. It also affects the physics of the ocean itself. Cold water is denser than warm water, and that density plays a major role in how the ocean is structured. In the upper layers, especially in tropical and temperate regions, warm water floats on top of cooler water, creating distinct layers that don't easily mix. This is why nutrients and oxygen can become trapped in certain zones, and why the deep ocean remains so isolated from the surface. In polar regions, however, something interesting happens. Surface waters cool dramatically, sometimes freezing and forming sea ice. When seawater freezes, it leaves behind salt, creating very cold, very dense, very salty water. This heavy brine sinks rapidly, plunging into the depths and setting in motion global deep ocean currents. These are part of what scientists call the thermohaline circulation, or more poetically, the global ocean conveyor belt. This circulation helps move oxygen and nutrients from the surface into the deep ocean, where they are sorely needed. Without it, much of the deep sea would be anoxic, completely deprived of oxygen and uninhabitable. So while cold can be a challenge for life, it also drives the very systems that make deep sea ecosystems possible. It's a paradox only the ocean could pull off, deadly but essential. Some animals have evolved to take advantage of this cold. Take, for example, the Greenland shark. This mysterious creature can live for centuries, yes, centuries, and is believed to be one of the longest living vertebrates on Earth. Some individuals may be over 400 years old. Their slow growth and metabolism are directly tied to the frigid waters they inhabit. Everything they do slowly. It's not a race, it's a glacial waltz. Another strategy for surviving the cold is to simply not rely on it at all. Some deep-sea creatures cluster around geothermal features, like hydrothermal vents, where water can reach temperatures of over 300 degrees Celsius, that's over 570 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, but just centimeters away from that boiling vent, the water is near freezing. Deep-sea life has learned to exploit these steep thermal gradients, creating miniature ecosystems where hot meets cold. It's like pitching a tent between a volcano and an iceberg. But not everyone gets to live near a warm vent. Most deep-sea creatures have to deal with the relentless cold on a daily basis. So, how do they stay warm? Well, they don't. Unlike mammals which regulate their body temperature internally, most fish and invertebrates are ectothermic. That means their body temperature is determined by their environment, rather than fighting the cold. They embrace it. Their enzymes, membranes, and metabolisms are built to operate efficiently at near freezing temperatures. If you took one of these animals and placed it in a tropical aquarium, it wouldn't thank you. It would probably expire from heat stress. Cold also affects how deep-sea animals reproduce. Many species have long development times for eggs and larvae. In some cases, it can take years for a deep-sea organism to reach maturity. But again, this slow pace fits the rhythm of the deep. With fewer predators, less competition, and fewer disturbances, deep-sea life doesn't need to rush. That said, the cold doesn't mean safety. In fact, it can be a silent threat. Many deep-sea animals have such narrow thermal tolerance ranges that even slight warming, just 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, can have catastrophic consequences. As climate change begins to alter ocean temperatures and circulation patterns, the deep sea is no longer as isolated as it once was. Warm water is beginning to creep downward, disrupting currents, oxygen levels, and the carefully balanced lives of the creatures below. Still, there's something beautifully poetic about life in the cold. It reminds us that warmth isn't always a requirement for life, that in the quiet, in the stillness, in the slow rhythm of the deep, there exists a world not dependent on sunrises or seasons, a world where heat is rare, and yet life endures. So, the next time you pull on a blanket or warm your hands by a fire, spare a thought for the strange stoic creatures drifting in the icy blackness beneath the sea. They have no fireplaces, no cozy socks, no cocoa with marshmallows, just cold, patience, and the quiet comfort of knowing they've adapted to one of the harshest environments on the planet and made it home. If you close your eyes and imagine the deep sea, you might think first of the darkness, a deep, endless, unbroken black, and you'd be right. Sunlight, for all its power, only reaches so far beneath the ocean surface. By the time you descend around 1,000 meters, or just over 3,000 feet, the light is all but gone. Beyond that, it's like being inside the world's largest, wettest closet, with the light turned off permanently. This absence of light is one of the most defining features of the deep ocean. It creates a world where vision, as we know it, is often useless, but life doesn't give up easily. Instead, creatures here have developed a range of remarkable adaptations that allow them to navigate, hunt, and survive in this endless night. Some have evolved ways to sense their environment without relying on sight at all. Others have found a way to bring the light with them. Let's start with the obvious question. Why is there no light in the deep sea? Well, it all comes down to how water absorbs sunlight. In clear ocean water, sunlight can travel only about 200 meters deep before it fades into twilight. Blue light goes the farthest, which is why the ocean looks blue from above. But even blue light disappears completely by about 1,000 meters. At that point, the ocean enters what scientists call the aphotic zone, literally meaning without light. And once you're there, you might as well forget about your flashlight unless it's biological, but more on that later. In this dark world, many animals have decided that eyes are simply not worth the trouble. Take the deep-sea tripod fish, for example. This odd little creature has such poor eyesight that it doesn't even bother to use its eyes for hunting. Instead, it sits motionless on the seafloor, balancing on long bony fins like a three-legged stool, and waits for food to drift by. It uses specialized sensors on its fins and face to detect the faintest movements in the water, almost like feeling the brush of a ghost. Then there are the creatures that go even further, those that abandon eyes entirely. Some deep-sea invertebrates, like certain species of shrimp and worms, are completely blind. Their world is one of touch and chemical signals instead of eyes. They rely on sensitive hairs, pressure sensors, and receptors that can detect trace chemicals in the water, like a sixth sense, but very wet. Other animals, on the contrary, double down on vision. The barrelfish, for example, has eyes so large and sensitive they can detect the faintest glimmer of bioluminescence in the dark. But there's a twist. Its eyes are located inside a transparent fluid-filled dome on its head. Yes, you heard that right. Its skull is partially see-through, like a biological fishbowl. This allows its eyes to rotate inside the dome, scanning above and ahead for tiny flashes of light that might indicate prey or predators. But perhaps the most elegant solution to eternal darkness is to make your own light. Enter bioluminescence, nature's built-in flashlight. Bioluminescence is the production of light by a living organism. It's not just a rare party trick, it's widespread in the deep sea. In fact, scientists estimate that more than 75% of deep-sea creatures can produce light in some form. Some glow faintly like embers, others flash in dazzling displays, and a few use it as an actual lure to bring dinner straight to their mouths. The light is created by a chemical reaction, usually involving a light-emitting molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When these two come together, they produce a soft, eerie glow. The exact color varies, but most bioluminescence in the deep sea is blue or green. Why? Because those are the wavelengths that travel farthest in water, perfect for maximum visibility in a place where every photon counts. Some animals produce this light on their own, using specialized cells called photophores. Others form symbiotic relationships with glowing bacteria, housing them in special organs and essentially outsourcing their lighting system to microbes. The flashlight fish, for example, has glowing bacterial patches beneath its eyes that it can turn on and off by opening and closing a flap of skin. It's like nature's answer to a headlamp with a dimmer switch. But bioluminescence isn't just for show, it serves some very practical purposes. First, there's camouflage. Yes, you read that correctly. Camouflage in the dark. Some fish use a technique called counterillumination. They produce light on their undersides that matches the faint glow from above, making them invisible from below to predators. Looking up, they disappear into the background. It's like cloaking technology, but squishier. Others use light for communication. Certain squid flash patterns at each other to signal warnings or attract mates. Some shrimp use bursts of light as a kind of underwater flare gun to startle predators or distract them during a getaway. And some deep-sea jellyfish, when attacked, release glowing filaments into the water like a burglar throwing glitter to mark a thief. But the most famous example of bioluminescence has to be the anglerfish. The females of this species have a long, fleshy filament that extends from their heads, tipped with a glowing lure. They dangle this light in front of their massive jaws, drawing in curious prey like moths to a flame. It's a trap, of course, but a very pretty one. The male anglerfish, on the other hand, is tiny and lacks a lure. Instead, he spends his life searching for a female, and when he finds one, he bites on and fuses with her, becoming a permanent parasitic partner. It's romantic in a kind of unsettling deep-sea way. Some species have even developed invisibility cloaks, using light. The hatchetfish, for instance, has highly reflective scales and uses subtle bioluminescence to erase its own shadow. That way, predators below it can't see its silhouette against the dim light from above. It's like trying to hide in the dark with a carefully tuned nightlight strapped to your chest. And not all light in the deep sea is alive. Some of it comes from natural chemical reactions in the water, or from disturbances caused by submersibles and cameras. But the living lights are the stars of the show. They shimmer, blink, pulse, and wave through the dark, like a living aurora borealis, turning the inky blackness into a slow-motion fireworks display. In this world without sunlight, bioluminescence becomes more than just a tool. It's a language, a form of expression, a way to see, to be seen, or not to be seen at all. It's a reminder that even in the darkest places, nature finds a way to shine. So, while the deep sea may seem lonely and blind, it's actually full of signals, gestures, and flickers. Eyes may be useless for some, oversized for others, or entirely replaced by glowing dots and clever tricks. There's no moonlight, no dawn, no shadows, but there is movement, there is communication, and there is light, born not from the sun, but from the living breath of the sea itself. Take a deep breath in, and let it out slowly. Now imagine doing that at the bottom of the ocean. Not so easy, is it? Down in the deep sea, breathing, something most of us do without thinking, becomes one of the greatest challenges to life there. There's no fresh air, no gentle breeze, no waving kelp forest exchanging gases with the sky, just dense cold water and very little oxygen. But despite that, life finds a way. Creatures of the deep have evolved some truly ingenious methods to extract and conserve oxygen, or in some cases to do without it altogether. Let's start by understanding how oxygen gets into seawater in the first place. Oxygen enters seawater in two main ways: by mixing with air at the surface, and through photosynthesis by marine plants and algae in the sunlit zones. But remember, in the deep sea, there is no sunlight, and the surface is often miles away. So once oxygen-rich water sinks into the depths, that's pretty much all the oxygen those zones are going to get for a long time. There's no magical refill button. What's down there is down there. This is where things get tricky. As water sinks and currents circulate, oxygen gets used up by bacteria and other organisms as they break down organic material drifting from above. This creates what scientists call oxygen minimum zones, stretches of water, usually between 200 and 1,000 meters deep, where oxygen levels are critically low. In some places they're so low that fish and most animals simply can't survive. It's like the ocean's version of a high-altitude desert, except instead of sand, you've got soup. So, how do deep-sea creatures cope with this? Let's begin with the basics. Gills. Gills are marvels of biological engineering. They work by exposing blood vessels to water so that oxygen can diffuse in and carbon dioxide can diffuse out. But in low-oxygen environments, regular gills just aren't enough. That's why many deep-sea animals have evolved super-efficient gills that are larger, thinner, or more richly supplied with blood vessels. These gills maximize the surface area for gas exchange, helping the animal absorb every last molecule of oxygen it can find. Some species, like deep-dwelling squid, or certain types of fish, also have hemoglobin in their blood that binds oxygen more tightly than ours does. That means they can carry more oxygen per molecule of blood and hold on to it longer. It's like having a built-in scuba tank that never quite runs dry. Some even have different forms of hemoglobin optimized for low oxygen environments. Their blood chemistry is practically custom designed by evolution to squeeze oxygen from a stone, or rather from a teaspoon of seawater. In addition to efficient oxygen uptake, many deep-sea animals simply reduce their need for oxygen. Their metabolisms are incredibly slow, allowing them to survive on minimal energy. They don't dash around hunting or fleeing at top speed. Instead, they glide, drift, or wait, using as little energy as possible. It's a lifestyle of extreme patience. If deep-sea creatures had a motto, it might be, "Why rush?" Some animals take this strategy even further. Certain species of worms and sea cucumbers can switch to anaerobic respiration, essentially producing energy without oxygen. This isn't a long-term solution, of course. It's more of a survival trick for when conditions become especially tough, but it's useful in places where oxygen levels fluctuate, like near deep-sea vents or decomposing whale falls. It's like having a backup generator when the power goes out. Speaking of whale falls, those massive decaying bodies of whales that sink to the bottom can temporarily throw oxygen levels into chaos as scavengers gather and bacteria go to work digesting the whale's soft tissues. They consume huge amounts of oxygen. It's a buffet, but it comes with a cost. Some species time their visits to avoid the worst of the oxygen depletion, arriving only after the initial feeding frenzy has passed. Others have adapted to cope with these low oxygen feasts, using specialized enzymes or metabolic pathways. Another important trick in the deep sea is size. Many deep-dwelling creatures are either very small or very large, but with a low metabolic rate. This is known as gigantism or dwarfism, and both strategies can be beneficial when oxygen is limited. Small animals need less oxygen overall, while large ones, like the colossal squid or giant amphipod, can store more oxygen in their massive bodies. They also tend to move less, conserving energy and oxygen at every turn. Some animals take advantage of oxygen-rich currents or upwellings, rare but vital oceanic events, where deep waters are briefly refreshed with surface oxygen. These events can trigger bursts of activity, feeding, or migration in otherwise sleepy ecosystems. It's as if the entire deep-sea community collectively takes a deep breath, then returns to its usual quiet routine. Even in the darkest, deepest trenches, where pressure is intense and oxygen levels are often the lowest, life finds a way. The Hadal snailfish, for instance, lives at depths of over 8,000 meters and seems entirely unbothered by the low oxygen and crushing pressure. It has finely tuned blood chemistry and a body built for conservation, nothing wasted, nothing rushed. Then there's the vampire squid, one of the deep sea's most iconic residents. Despite the spooky name, it doesn't actually drink blood. Instead, it feeds on marine snow, tiny particles of organic matter that drift down from above. The vampire squid has incredibly low metabolic needs, and its gills are some of the largest proportionally speaking of any marine animal. It glides slowly through the darkness, trailing its glowing arms like a ghost, perfectly content to take things easy. There's also a growing interest in how some deep-sea microbes deal with low oxygen or even no oxygen at all. These extremophiles can survive in anoxic environments by using chemical energy sources like methane, hydrogen sulfide, or even iron instead of breathing oxygen. This process, known as chemosynthesis, is what powers entire ecosystems around hydrothermal vents. It's a completely separate strategy for life, one that doesn't rely on oxygen at all. The existence of these oxygen-free life forms has huge implications, not just for biology but for our understanding of life itself. If organisms can survive without oxygen, they might also survive in extreme environments beyond Earth, places like the icy oceans beneath Europa, Jupiter's moon, or the methane lakes of Titan. Suddenly, these distant worlds seem just a bit more plausible as alien homes. Back here on Earth, though, the story of deep-sea breathing is one of efficiency, adaptation, and quiet brilliance. These creatures aren't gasping for air, they've evolved to live on the edge of breathlessness. In doing so, they've rewritten the rules of biology. So, the next time you take a breath, slow and steady, in and out, think of the creatures miles beneath you. They can't rise to the surface, they don't know what sky looks like, but in the deep, dark silence, they breathe in their own quiet way. Down here, in the deep, where sunlight never reaches, and the pressure is enough to flatten a car, it would be easy to assume the world is devoid of beauty, but that couldn't be further from the truth. If the surface ocean is a sunlit garden, then the deep sea is a galaxy of glowing stars, blinking and shimmering in a silent ballet. Welcome to the world of bioluminescence, nature's most mesmerizing light show. Bioluminescence is the ability of living organisms to produce light through a chemical reaction. It's not borrowed light like the moon, and it's not reflected light like a mirror. It's homegrown, self-generated, biologically engineered brilliance. It's surprisingly common in the deep ocean. In fact, scientists estimate that more than 3/4 of all animals in the mid to deep ocean have some kind of bioluminescent capability. But before we wade into the glowing depths, let's talk science, just briefly and gently. Bioluminescence typically involves two key molecules, luciferin and luciferase. When luciferin reacts with oxygen, catalyzed by the enzyme luciferase, it emits light. The color of this light is usually blue or green, because those wavelengths travel the farthest in seawater. In some rare cases, it can also appear red or violet, depending on the animal and its purpose. Some animals produce these chemicals themselves, while others form symbiotic relationships with glowing bacteria that live in special light-producing organs, often tucked into clever little pockets and pouches along their bodies. Either way, the result is the same, a cold, flickering glow that doesn't generate heat but dazzles the imagination. But what is all this glowing actually for? Why would a fish, living in the blackest part of the ocean, evolve to light up like a living Christmas tree? The answer is survival. Let's start with the obvious one, finding food. In the deep sea, it's hard enough to locate a snack, let alone catch one. Some animals use light to lure prey closer. The classic example is the deep-sea anglerfish. The female anglerfish, because the males are tiny and frankly less interesting, has a long fleshy rod called an esker protruding from her forehead. At the end of it is a glowing bulb powered by bioluminescent bacteria. She waves this glowing lure in front of her toothy mouth, mimicking the movements of small prey. When a curious fish or shrimp drifts in for a closer look, snap, dinner is served. Efficient, if a little dramatic. Then there are animals that use light not to hunt, but to hide. This might seem backward, but it's clever. Some species use a trick called counter-illumination. These animals, like the lanternfish or the hatchetfish, produce light on their undersides that matches the faint glow of what little light may trickle from above. This cancels out their shadow, making them virtually invisible to predators lurking below. It's essentially deep-sea stealth technology. Communication is another reason for all this glowing in the murky blackness. Sound doesn't carry far, and visuals are often limited, but light can send a clear, unmistakable signal. Some species of squid and shrimp use rapid pulses of light to communicate with one another, perhaps to signal mating readiness, territorial boundaries, or even a warning. It's not too different from a blinking neon sign, occupied, come closer, or back off. And because each species has its own specific pattern and rhythm, these light shows serve as a kind of secret language. Some displays are even more dramatic. The deep-sea comb jelly, for instance, doesn't just glow, it refracts light through its body in a cascade of rainbow colors, like a living disco ball. Scientists aren't entirely sure whether this is for communication, camouflage, or just because it's fabulous, but it certainly makes an impression. Of course, light can also be used offensively. When startled, some creatures emit sudden, intense bursts of light to confuse predators. It's a bit like a flashbang in an action movie. Others leave behind glowing clouds like underwater smoke bombs. The deep-sea shrimp Acanthophera papyra, for example, squirts out a glowing blue substance when threatened, creating a luminous distraction that allows it to escape. It's not the most polite getaway, but it works. Then there are those who go one step further. The Tomopteris worm, a type of swimming polychasid, doesn't just glow, its bioluminescence is yellow. This is exceedingly rare in the ocean, where blue and green dominate. Why yellow? No one knows for sure. It could be a warning, a mating call, or simply an evolutionary quirk, but when it darts through the dark water, trailing little bursts of golden light, it looks like something out of a fantasy novel. The vampire squid deserves a special mention here. This elegant creature, despite its slightly misleading name, it doesn't drink blood, has some of the most advanced bioluminescent abilities of any known animal. It can produce light from the tips of its arms, its head, and even its eyes. When threatened, it turns itself inside out, cloaking its vulnerable body in a protective webbing while spraying a cloud of bioluminescent mucus into the water. Imagine a ninja throwing a glitter bomb and then vanishing into the night. That's the vampire squid's signature move. Another fascinating user of light is the dragonfish. Unlike most of its neighbors, it can produce red light. This is a game changer because most deep-sea animals can't see red. The dragonfish uses this invisible spotlight to silently illuminate its prey without giving away its position. It's the equivalent of having night vision goggles in a pitch-black room, and it's incredibly effective. Even the simplest flashes of light can carry complex meanings. Some researchers believe that light pulses might help fish stay together in groups, find mates, or recognize individuals in the endless dark. A flicker of light might be the only handshake some creatures ever get. And then there's the possibility that we've only scratched the surface. Many of the glowing creatures discovered so far were found by accident, caught in trawls or glimpsed briefly by submersibles. Who knows what light displays go unseen, hundreds or thousands of meters beneath the waves. Entire languages of light may be playing out in secret, a symphony of signals in a world with no audience. Bioluminescence isn't limited to animals, either. Some types of plankton glow when disturbed, often in huge numbers. Swimmers near the shore might have seen this as sparkling blue water around their hands or footprints. Imagine that effect, but deep beneath the sea, where the motion of a single squid or shrimp can ignite a ghostly cloud of blue that drifts away like a memory. This ability to create light, to shine in the dark, reminds us that the deep sea isn't just a place of mystery and silence, it's a place of communication, of creativity, of constant quiet brilliance. In a realm where sunlight never reaches, life has not simply adapted, it has innovated. So, as you imagine drifting through the midnight depths, picture the occasional flicker of light, some near, some far away, blinking like stars scattered across a black sky. They're signals, warnings, invitations, perhaps even love notes. In the deep sea, the language of light speaks where words and sound cannot. It whispers in pulses, dances in flashes, and paints the darkness with its gentle glow, and best of all, it never makes a sound. It's easy to imagine the deep sea as a vast, empty space, an endless stretch of nothingness, cold and dark and quiet. But if you look closely, you'll find it's anything but empty. In fact, it's full of life, strange, wonderful, sometimes downright bizarre life. These aren't your average goldfish or aquarium shrimp. No, these are creatures that seem plucked from the imagination of a science fiction writer, and yet they're real. They live right here on our planet, far beneath the surface, in places we're only just beginning to explore. Let's start with a creature so odd, it practically rewrites the fish rulebook, the barley fish. This fish has a transparent, dome-shaped head, through which you can see its eyeballs, large, green, tubular orbs that point straight upward. At first glance, it looks like the fish is permanently surprised, or possibly piloting a small alien spaceship. Those eyes are adapted to detect the faintest traces of light above, allowing it to spot the silhouettes of prey in the water column. For years, scientists thought its eyes were fixed in place, but they've since discovered the fish can rotate them within its transparent head. It's like having periscopes built into your skull. Another deep-sea enigma is the gulper eel, also known as the pelican eel. This creature has a disproportionately large mouth, so large in fact that it can open wide enough to swallow prey larger than itself. The mouth is attached to a long whip-like tail that can stretch several times the length of its body. Despite its terrifying appearance, the gulper eel is not particularly aggressive. It uses a bioluminescent organ on the end of its tail to lure in curious prey, then simply opens its mouth and scoops them up like a living vacuum cleaner. Then there's the Dumbo octopus, named for its ear-like fins that resemble the oversized ears of the Disney elephant. These adorable cephalopods live at depths of 3,000 to 4,000 meters and have a slow floating movement that looks almost like underwater dancing. They don't have an ink sac like their shallow water cousins. There's no need to make a quick getaway when there's nowhere to run and hardly anyone to chase you. Instead, they rely on stealth, camouflage, and those fluttering fins to navigate the darkness with quiet grace. If you're looking for something out of a horror movie, consider the fangtooth fish. Despite its small size, usually only around 6 inches long, it has the largest teeth relative to body size of any fish in the ocean. Its teeth are so long, in fact, that the fish has special pockets in its head to keep them from puncturing its own brain when it closes its mouth. Fangtooths hunt by detecting vibrations in the water and can sense prey even in near total darkness. Their armor-like scales and fierce appearance make them look like tiny underwater dragons, patrolling the blackness with bared fangs. But not all deep-sea creatures are loners. Some gather in massive groups, creating the largest migration on Earth, one that happens every single day. This is known as the Deal vertical migration. Every night, countless creatures, lanternfish, shrimp, jellyfish and more, rise from the deep to feed in the upper layers of the ocean. Then, before sunrise, they return to the depths. This daily commute moves more biomass than any other migration on the planet, and it plays a crucial role in the global carbon cycle. It's a kind of invisible ballet, a tidal dance of life that happens entirely in the dark. One of the most elegant dancers in this migration is the siphonophore. This organism looks like a long glowing ribbon floating through the water, but it's not a single animal. It's actually a colony made up of many specialized individuals called zooids, each with its own role. Some zooids are in charge of movement, others handle feeding, reproduction, or defense. Some siphonophores can stretch over 30 meters long, longer than a blue whale, yet they drift silently through the deep, almost ghost-like, pulsing with light and color. Then there are the tripod fish. These unusual creatures perch motionless on the seafloor, using 3 long, stiff fins, 2 pectoral fins and 1 tail fin, as if they're standing on stilts. They face into the current and use long, sensitive fin rays to detect prey drifting by. It's not the most glamorous way to feed, but in a place where energy is scarce, patience is a powerful weapon. The deep sea is also home to the most extreme version of till death do us part in the animal kingdom, the mating habits of the anglerfish. The females are the ones with the famous glowing lures and fearsome jaws. The males, by contrast, are tiny, often only a fraction of the female size. When a male finds a female, he bites onto her body, fuses his tissues with hers, and essentially becomes a permanent appendage. Over time, he loses his eyes, fins, and even internal organs, existing only to supply sperm when needed. It's not the most romantic arrangement, but it works in an environment where mates are few and far between. Another animal worth knowing is the sea pig. Despite the name, it's not actually a pig, and it doesn't live in a barn. It's a type of deep-sea cucumber. Sea pigs have little legs, a squishy body, and a habit of wandering the ocean floor in slow, deliberate herds, searching for food. They feed on detritus, bits of dead organisms and decaying matter that fall from above. It's not glamorous, but someone has to clean up. They're like the janitors of the abyss, quietly hoovering up the leftovers of the ocean world. Let's not forget the blobfish, perhaps the most unfairly judged creature in the sea. In its natural habitat, thousands of meters below the surface, the blobfish looks perfectly normal with a firm body and efficient movement. But when brought to the surface, the change in pressure causes its body to collapse into a gelatinous blob. That sad, saggy face that's become a meme is actually a result of barotrauma. It's a bit like judging someone's appearance based solely on their passport photo taken at 4 in the morning. Some creatures of the deep sea live in complete stillness, while others are constantly on the move, drifting, hunting, searching. Some build their homes in the sediment, burrowing into the mud. Others float in mid-water, suspended in a world with no top or bottom, no walls, no shelter, only water. And then there are the creatures that glow, not just with light but with mystery. The glass squid, nearly transparent with light organs on its eyes and tentacles. The comb jelly, rippling with rainbows. The atolla jellyfish, which emits a brilliant flashing ring of blue light when disturbed, possibly to summon predators of its predators, an underwater distress signal. Even the animals we think we know become strange down here. Crabs with fuzzy arms that resemble mittens, perhaps to host bacteria that detoxify the water. Octopuses that lay a single clutch of eggs and guard them for years without eating. Worms that live inside whale bones and use bacteria to digest fat. Life, it turns out, is not only persistent, it's wildly creative. These creatures don't follow the rules we expect. They don't look like anything we're used to. Some are soft and boneless, while others are armored and sharp. Some drift like ghosts, while others shine like stars. All of them have adapted in their own beautiful and baffling ways to a world where light, warmth, and certainty are in short supply. In many ways, they remind us of how little we know. Scientists estimate that over 80% of the ocean remains unexplored. For every deep sea creature we've found, there may be dozens more we haven't. Each expedition brings new surprises: fish with transparent blood, shrimp that punch with the force of a bullet, worms that build tubes of minerals in boiling water. It's a world where the improbable becomes the everyday. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, think of them, these odd alien neighbors of ours, floating, glowing, waiting in the dark. They're reminders that life doesn't need sunlight, doesn't need comfort, doesn't even need a proper skeleton to thrive. It just needs possibility and a little patience. The deep sea is full of characters, and the best part is, we've only just met the opening act.